NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Hercules Tire.
60 minutes of local, regional, and touring series interviews, news, and opinion. Now a couple of guys whose parents never had one of those. My child is an honor student at stickers on their car. Kyle, Rickey, and Buddy Long.
And for good reason, I think.
How'd they know that? Were they right?
I guess. Welcome to NASCAR Coast to Coast for this Wednesday afternoon. Kyle, Rickey, Buddy Long with you. Much to talk about this week. We had a couple of tracks open up last week as far as the NASCAR Whelen All-American Series is concerned. This coming week, the NASCAR K&N Pro Series back in action at a brand new racetrack for them in Mobile, Alabama. And the NASCAR Southern Modifieds kick off their season at the Caraway Speedway, I guess the unofficial home of the NASCAR Whelen Southern Modified Tour, with a very impressive entry list.
Yeah, they do. They do indeed. They look very good. We mentioned last week a couple of drivers that have run the K&N Pro Series East Opener in New Smyrna, who will also be in Mobile, that in the form of David Calabrese and also Trey Hutchins. But when you look at drivers like Richie Pallai, who's going to be on the show today, that's in one of the top rides on the tour. Having Danny Bohn back on a regular basis and some other drivers from the north that usually venture down. We do have some heavyweights that do come down and other drivers. It's going to be good to basically see what kind of turnout we're going to have for the season opener.
Just under 20 cars last week or just under 20 cars last year at the season opener. I think we're going to expect the same here this coming weekend at the Caraway Speedway. Danny Bohn will join us on the show, driving for Frank Fleming in the full season for Danny this season. He'll join us here in just a little bit on the show. Richie Pallai Jr., he's paired up with Hillbilly Racing, coming down from the north, a driver that I was fortunate to kind of grow up with in watching his career develop in the SK Modifieds at the Stafford Motor Speedway, making the trip down south to run full-time on the Southern Tour. And Julia Landauer will join us in studio. And Julia, she's had an eventful day already,
yes,
flying back from, I believe,
Alaska,
where she had a speaking engagement up there. She is flying down to join us because she's going full-time this year in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West for Bill McAnally Racing.
Yeah, made the announcement a couple of weeks ago, Toyota sponsorship on the side of the car. She is going to be a good interview to talk to, a good person. Limited sportsman champion at Motor Mile Speedway a year ago in Radford, Virginia, now up to the K&N Pro Series West. That's a pretty big jump.
It's a big jump. Also, and I want to pick her brain about this a little bit because I'm a TV junkie when it comes to reality television shows, but she's also a former contestant on Survivor.
She's a survivor.
She did.
She survived us in WKA, and then she went on. See, we prepared her for karting.
Yeah.
We prepared her for Survivor. But I was really fascinated, I guess. It was a few years ago when I saw the name. She went by Julie on there. She was always known as Julia. And I said, because you didn't have the last name. You didn't see the last. You just saw Julie. And I kept looking at the TV screen. Dad was a big Survivor fan. I don't think I ever really watched it. And I was like, oh, my gosh. That's Julia Landauer. I said, she raced with us. You know, it's one thing to see these drivers get up to the high levels of motorsports and see them on TV, but for a show like that, that was pretty awesome.
It said, what, Julie, race car driver.
Yeah, it did. It did.
They did give that much info, and that was about it. That's all you pretty much knew about her. So she'll be in studio with us here coming up in a little bit. Some news this week. Good news out of the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour up in the Northeast. The Seekonk Speedway signing Anytime Realty as a title sponsor for their NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour race coming up on Saturday, September 10th. The tour returning to that track for the first time, I believe, since 2005. So good news out of the Modified Tour as always want those new sponsors coming in, especially for these short track bull rings that those sponsors, they pay big dividends toward the race weekend.
No, absolutely. That's a great shot in the arm for the tour. Seekonk is back on this season. And as we've alluded to, the final several events at the tail end of the Whelen Modified Tour season, it's not at a repeat racetrack. Seekonk, I believe, is one of those tracks that's a part of the tail end of the deal.
Yeah, yep.
Where you don't have a repeat track left in there. They, along with the Oswego Speedway, joining on to the Whelen Modified Tour ranks. So that's good news. That's good news on that level.
NASCAR K&N Pro Series entry list is out this weekend as well. We talked about the Modified Tour entry list for the South. Jesse Little, Brandon Godovic returning to the tour for this event after they were not part of the season opener at the New Smyrna Speedway. Jesse Little driving for Rhett Jones Racing, teammate to Dominic Van Werrigen. Also, Godovic back in his family operation, Precision Performance Motorsports.
I always got to think about their team
TBM.
before I say what it is. Austin Theriault, he'll be another driver running for Shiggy Hattori this weekend. And we knew that there was a question mark with Spencer Davis and Kyle Benjamin as to whether they were going to run the full season. Not sure if they are or not, but they are going to be at Mobile this weekend. And that was a good 1-2 punch down to New Smyrna in that new team configuration. So there will be a shakeup, obviously, as far as the top of the leaderboard is concerned, since Todd Gilliland is not a participant there this weekend. So it should be good to see what comes out of Mobile as we get set for Greenville Pickens here in a few weeks.
Of course, Todd running full-time in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West will pick and choose some of the NASCAR K&N Pro Series East races. New Smyrna, one of them, to open up the season. He ended up going to Victory Lane. Other news on the Rev Racing front, we talked a little bit about the NASCAR K&N Pro Series East drivers for Rev Racing. The team announcing a new driver today for their NASCAR Whelen All-American Series late model program, Madeline Crane, coming on board. I believe we got a chance to see Madeline first time in the national spotlight last July or August. Whenever we went to Eldora for the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race, she was there trying to qualify into that event. A dirt modified, I believe she's dirt modified driver in Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely. So another female talent that we see coming up through the ranks, doing very well, much like a Julia Landauer. So going to be fun to watch the progression of Madeline Crane. She's
going to replace Juan Garcia, who had been in that ride, but is going to explore other opportunities in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West. So he has left the program. Madeline will fill that seat and will make her debut in, I believe, this weekend at the Hickory Motor Speedway for their regular Saturday night program, which opened up this past Saturday night with round one of the Paramount Kia Challenge.
Yeah, Ryan Millington, another young driver, 14-year-old competitor coming away with a victory, and very impressive from the tail end of the field in the Paramount Kia Big Ten Challenge race. Had a chance to talk to some folks over the weekend at GoPro Motorplex, learned a little bit more about this young driver and the fact that Christian Payhud, a driver that we had on the show last year by virtue of winning a K&N Pro Series West race, is one of the people that's wrenching on the car. Obviously was able to give him a lot of good insight, but very impressive, beating Dexter Knipe Jr. And what many people would think would be one of the heavyweights, and Josh Berry, one of the regulars for Junior Motorsports in that Big Ten Challenge race.
Berry finishing third in the 14-car field. Charlie Watson won the limited late model feature. Charlie Neal won in the Renegades. They're back in action this Saturday night for round number 2. Caraway Speedway also opened up this past weekend. Tommy Lemons Jr., no surprise there, picked up the 150-lap late model feature, holding off Bradley McCaskill and Ryan Wilson. 17 cars took the green flag. Their next race, of course, this weekend, featuring the NASCAR Whelen Southern Modified Tour.
Late models will be off. They'll run March the 26th. That will be their next big event. And as we mentioned last week, live pit stops. Every race for late models, a 150-lap event, $5,000 to the winner. Lee Pulliam, we know he's going to come to life very soon, but the second race in a row, actually, where he did not have a very good finish, came home 15th in the event. That was coupled with a 17th place finish, I believe, at Myrtle Beach Speedway in the Icebreaker a couple of weeks ago. So you know it's only a matter of time before he's going to figure it out, and that cream's going to rise right back to the top. But for Tommy Lemons Jr., he's off to a great start already this year.
And the third and final track that opened up this week, Greenville Pickens Speedway, Chase Purdy swept both of the twin late model features, held off Bob Root in race number 1, and inherited the race win number 2 for the second feature event because Trey Gibson failed post-race tech. Remember, it was about this time last year where Gibson had a similar issue after winning the event and failed post-race tech. So happened again, and Chase Purdy was able to capitalize on it, winning both of those feature events.
Yeah, David Roberts, a defending race champion, came home third in both. They'll have twin 75s coming up on March the 19th. Some other tracks this weekend, South Boston Speedway, they'll kick into gear. They have their twin 100s. Mentioned them in the offseason. A lot of off-season plans to as far as capital improvement projects are concerned. I think the grandstands were a big part this year. I think once the season comes to a conclusion, a major repaving project is going to be getting underway. Sounded like they had a very good car count the other week as far as testing was concerned. Always a lot of heavyweights at South Boston Speedway, so looking forward to their opening of their season this weekend.
That comes up this weekend, along with the NASCAR Whelen Southern Modifieds at Caraway Speedway. When we come back, we'll talk to one of the drivers in the field in a new ride for this year. Danny Bohn, that is, joins us after the break.
NASCAR Coast to Coast will be right back on MRN.com.
Whatever you drive, wherever you go, Hercules Tires will get you there, whether you're running on dirt or running a job. Our dependable, high-quality tires are the perfect fit for your needs. For unmatched value, selection, and warranty with industry-leading road hazard protection, there's only one choice: Hercules Tires. To learn more, visit HerculesTire.com or call 800-677-9535. Hercules Tires, right on our strength.
Luke Bryan.
Yeah, that's my kind of night.
Jason Aldean.
Let's get this thing started. It's my kind of party.
Florida Georgia Line.
This is how we roll.
Kid Rock.
All free.
Lady Antebellum.
Long stretch of love.
Willie Nelson.
Mama, don't let you face
So much more. Get ready for the first ever Country 500. The Great American Music Fest at Daytona International Speedway. Plus Little Big Town, Lee Brice, Tyler Farr, Trace Atkins, and more. Memorial Day weekend, May 27th, 28th, and 29th. 3 awesome days and nights on the infield of the World Center of Racing. Stay in the campgrounds inside the festival. For tickets and information, visit country500.com. Don't miss Luke Bryan, Jason Aldean, Florida Georgia Line, Kid Rock, Lady Antebellum, and many more at the Country 500 at Daytona International Speedway. Sponsored in part by Budweiser.
This is NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour driver Ryan Preece, and you're listening to NASCAR Coast to Coast on MRN.com. Now back to you, Kyle and Buddy.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Hercules Tire. Kyle, Rickey, Buddy Long. Is Ryan Preece really a NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour driver?
No, he's a NASCAR Xfinity Series driver who does moonlight as a
that's
NASCAR.
a good word
I was
for
trying
it.
to think of the word moonlight. I couldn't get it out.
And he will be at the Icebreaker in a couple of weeks when the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour begins their season up north. The Southern Tour begins this weekend at the Caraway Speedway, and there will be a familiar face in the field. He ran full-time a couple of years ago, scaled back a little bit last year, but was successful in the races that he did run, picking up a win, and is back full-time this year driving for Frank Fleming on the Southern Modified Tour. We talk about Danny Bohn. Danny, welcome to NASCAR Coast to Coast, and you got to be excited to get back on the racetrack and get 2016 started with your new team this coming weekend at Caraway Speedway.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on the show. But yeah, I'm really excited actually for this Saturday. We went up and finished scaling the car up last night, and the numbers are where I want them, and everything looks good. So I really can't wait until Saturday.
Couple of changes in the offseason. You were one of those. We also have Richie Pallai Jr. on the show today talking about his new ride with the Hillbilly Racing effort. What kind of led to this decision between you, Chris, and Frank to put you in the car this year?
To be honest with you, I'm not really sure. I was tossing around, coming back to North Carolina. I definitely like the Carolinas, but I really didn't decide to until a couple weeks ago. And Chris, and my dad talked here and there. I talked to Chris too, and he says, "Hey, when you get down, you ought to take a ride up to the shop." So I took a ride up there, and we got talking, and they asked if I'd be interested in driving the car and trying to help them out a little bit. And like a week and a half ago, I didn't have a ride. I didn't really have anything lined up for racing, so it kind of just came about in the last week. And Frank was all for it, and with their knowledge and their equipment, and then with bringing me and my dad up to the table, I think they have good stuff. They run really well, but Frank says you just can't find that little bit extra. So that's kind of what we're going to concentrate on trying to do is just find that little bit extra and hopefully get some wins for them.
Fifth in points 2 years ago. You only ran 4 races. Last year, picked up a win. Was it difficult for you not to be in the car week in and week out and contending for the championship like, Buddy and I probably think you would have been up there contending for that title?
Well, yeah, absolutely it was. The only good part about it was I was living in New Jersey, so I wasn't living around it and, in the moment really, because I wasn't able to go to the racetracks and, go to lunch and see the drivers and, be in the heart of NASCAR. So it was definitely tough, but, if I wasn't really around it as much. So, but no, definitely glad to be back in the car for sure. Unfortunately I blew my motor up at Turkey Derby and, I didn't really know what my plans were for this year. So I didn't go out looking for sponsors or really get anything set up because I didn't know where I'd be. and then to get this deal going in the last week, and have the opportunity to drive for them. I've been very fortunate to have the sponsors I have and the opportunities that I've had. I drove for Eddie Harvey last year, which won the championship last year, and then to have people like the Flemings who've been around modified racing forever, ask me to drive their car. Like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, I wasn't on the tour, and I was sitting in the grandstands at Bowman Gray just wishing I could race. So, definitely very fortunate to have the opportunities and the sponsors and the help that I do.
And Bowman Gray, the site of a championship, as well as a Whelen Modified Tour victory on the southern side last year. Speaking of which, we know you got Bowman Gray pretty well figured out. It's always a challenge, though, each and every time you go. It's not a given. We know that. Caraway, South Boston, Bristol, some of the other tracks that are on the schedule. We talked to Jimmy Walker, the new tour director for the Whelen Southern Modified Tour last year. Very excited about a couple of the new venues in Concord Speedway and also East Carolina, because not your traditional short tracks. Very unique. Have you had the opportunity to take laps? I know the North-South Shootout may have fallen in there. I'm not sure if you got a chance to run it last year or not, but either one of the tracks, have you had a chance to take any laps on either one of them?
East Carolina, I've never been there, but Concord, actually, I've run quite a few times. I used to come down with my Bowman Gray car with an old 23-degree motor and run the shootout. And actually, in 2006, I came down and ran the SK Light division, and I actually won there in 2006 in that. So, it's going to be a little bit different. I haven't been there in a few years, but I feel like I have gained on experience. So I think, and honestly, Frank runs really well there. So I think, we might have to adjust on it a little bit, but I feel like with his setup and his knowledge there, because I've seen him run there. He runs really well there. So I should have a pretty good car underneath me. And then, I haven't raced there in a few years, but I do know generally how to get around there. So, it'd be I'm definitely excited to go back there. That's for sure.
Talking, of course, about your car owner and Frank Fleming getting around the Concord Speedway. Well, when he was a driver, how difficult is the backstretch there? I mean, this weekend in Phoenix, we're going to talk about the odd backstretch at Phoenix International Raceway with our NASCAR Xfinity Series and Sprint Cup broadcasts. Concord Speedway has a very unique backstretch as well, and I believe you're full throttle, and if you lift, you're probably going to get run over.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. If you can't go through the dogleg wide open, you're not doing something right. But Concord is a momentum track. If you think about it, you turn into one, and then you run up the hill into two, and you come back down the hill, and you run through the dogleg. And really, you need to concentrate on getting through one. Get the car slowed down, get the car turned, and be able to make that arc through two, and then carry that momentum all the way down the back stretch. Because when you're on the gas coming out of one and you don't lift until turn three, if you pick the gas up a half of the car length or a car length earlier than the guy in front of you, you're going to carry that speed all the way down the straightaway. So that's definitely something you want to concentrate on, is being able to get through one, get the car turned, and be able to run down that hill and through the dogleg wide open.
Whelen Modified Tour, the Southern Modified Tour, I should say, traditionally, again, 4 races within the next 5 weeks, 2 of those at Caraway, running at Concord Speedway, as we've been talking about, and also the South Boston Speedway. Then the big traditional break until 4th of July weekend, July the 1st, when you return to Caraway Speedway. You guys, I guess I'm assuming, running the Bowman Gray deal, and that's traditionally why there's the break in the schedule, but I know Frank and Chris in the past have done the Bowman Gray weekly deal. Is that the plan for this team as well this year?
I believe Chris is going to run the bigger shows, and I don't really know for sure what exactly I'm going to do. I have my car still, and I haven't won the opening night race there, and that's something definitely I'd like to try to do. So I might run my car over there opening night, but other than that, I'm not really sure. I know, like I said, I know Chris is going to run some over there, and maybe we might concentrate on trying to test a little bit in the summer and get we'll see how the first 4 races go. But with the short schedule on the Southern Tour and some of these racetracks, I usually run pretty well at Caraway and South Boston and all those tracks. So I feel like this is definitely a year that we can contend for the championship if we're able to make all the races. We don't want to set a schedule and have to be at certain places at certain times. We're going to take the first 4 races and reevaluate after that. But with the schedule that we have, they got rid of Langley. Unfortunately, I loved Langley. I just couldn't seem to. I ran well, but I had never finished well. So, the other tracks though, I generally run pretty good at. So, definitely looking forward to this schedule. It's 11 races. It's not a ton of races, so we might take the time in between and do a little testing and maybe go over to East Carolina and get some laps around there and see how we stack up.
You mentioned opening night, Bowman Gray Stadium coming up on April 30th, the annual running of the Hayes Jewelers 200. Now, in doing some research, found some interesting information out about your cousin, who is a professional bowler. Did you ever want to go that route? Apparently, Parker Bohn III has 105 perfect games, which I find absolutely incredible.
I can't bowl 105.
I can't either. I found that absolutely incredible. He's in these Hall of Fames. He's obviously one of the best out there. Have you ever explored that route, or did you ever explore that route before you discovered motorsports?
Honestly, no, I have not. I'm not a bad bowler, but I'm definitely not as good as him. He's been very successful with the bowling. I'd have to say he's the best left-handed bowler there is or ever was. Like you said, he's in the Hall of Fame. He's won a ton of titles, and he's got a ton of perfect games. And honestly, my younger brother, Andrew, who races at New Egypt now, he was in the bowling pretty good. He won the state championship, New Jersey State Individual Championship as a sophomore in high school, which is, there's only one of those. So, throughout all the high schools in New Jersey. And, it's just, he kind of, he took the bowling really serious, but in the back of his mind, he always wanted to race. So he got the opportunity to race, and he kind of put that on the back burner. I don't know if time will tell if that was the right decision or not, but, my younger brother is definitely a really good bowler, that's for sure. But I never went that route. I was always around the racing. I loved the racing. I grew up at the racetrack, and then when I was 15 years old, my dad bought me a bandolero, and I kind of gave up on everything. I played hockey, baseball, soccer, all that, and as soon as I got a race car, that was it. That was the end of those sports.
He bowls over the competition in a good way. In a good way.
105 perfect games. My God.
I bowled a 10 one time. I did pretty good. You hold a beer in your right hand, you bowl with your left. That's what I do, and, that's why I got a 10. Hey, the last time we talked to you, I think it was towards the end of last season. At that time, you were still up in New Jersey, and you said you were going to experiment a little bit, play on the dirt with the dirt modifieds, and daggone if you didn't. I know you're back down here doing some racing, but still hoping that if the schedule fits and if you can make a trip back up to the Northeast, you might catch a dirt mod race here or there?
Well, my brother's he's gonna race this year. I guess they're planning on racing for points, but yeah, I did get the driver's car. It's obviously way different than anything I've drove before. I drove them IMCA modifieds in North Carolina, and but those center seat cars, and they're just a whole lot different than what I was used to. And I didn't run bad. I didn't make the big show that I originally was planning on racing. We didn't qualify for that, but I ran a weekly show and finished 7th, which is not bad. They get a full field of cars, so definitely a learning experience. And I mainly just was trying to help my brother out and kind of get a little bit of handle on the race car. But I feel like we did. I feel like he's definitely gained, and I'm excited for him this year. I hope to. I don't want to put him out of a ride or take his ride, but I hope to at least get up there to watch him race, that's for sure.
Well, he's on dirt this year. You're back on asphalt. The NASCAR Whelen Southern Modified season opener this week at Caraway Speedway. Best of luck to you, Danny. As always, thanks for joining us here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, and hopefully we'll be chatting again soon.
Yeah, hopefully. We won the last race at Caraway, so hopefully next Wednesday I can talk to you again for the win.
There you go. There you go. That's this weekend at the Caraway Speedway. Best of luck to you, Danny Bohn, joining us here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, driving for Frank Fleming. When we come back, another driver that we're familiar with from the Northeast Modifieds, but another driver in a new situation for the Southern Modified Tour this week and this season in Richie Pallai Jr. He'll join us after the break.
Coming back with more of NASCAR Coast to Coast, it's Kyle, Rickey, and Buddy Long right after this.
The The Toyota Racing Team wants to take a quick moment to congratulate Kyle Busch on his 2015 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series championship that he won in the Camry. Don't worry, this will be as fast as Kyle in his Camry. How fast is Kyle? So fast he's won a ton of races across all NASCAR series. Plus, he's won 133 of Toyota's 332 NASCAR victories. He's even won 38 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series races in the tundra. And now here he is, wearing the 2015 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series championship crown. So yeah, Kyle is really fast. We're proud of him and all the folks at Joe Gibbs Racing, whose teamwork made this win possible. Keep those checkered flags waving and take another victory lap in your Camry, Kyle. Good luck to all our drivers in the 2016 season. Head over to ToyotaRacing.com to find more info about the Toyota Racing Team and Kyle's journey to victory. Better get there fast before Kyle wins another race. Let's go NASCAR. Toyota, let's go places. NASCAR is a registered trademark of the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, Inc.
Join the Motor Racing Network every Tuesday evening for NASCAR Live. Eli Gold, along with the cast of MRN personalities, will take you into the sport of NASCAR like you've never heard before.
And the intent was right there. There wasn't no, oh, oops, I bumped into him. This was, look out, here I come.
And what would NASCAR be without the fans?
As a fan, it was like, whoa.
It's NASCAR Live every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Motor Racing Network.
This is NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour driver Bobby Santos, and you're listening to NASCAR Coast to Coast on MRN.com. Now back to Kyle and Buddy.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network, brought to you by Hercules Tire, Kyle, Rickey, Buddy Long, and very excited about the start of the NASCAR Whelen Southern Modified Tour season. A lot of familiar names and familiar rides, but we also have some new names coming on board in some familiar rides as well, like the Hillbilly Racing Team.
The Hilly-Billy, okay.
Hilly-Billy.
You're gonna stick. That's gonna stick in your mind for the rest of the day. Yeah, Richie Pallai Jr. I mean, that's great to have him on. Having former New Englander J.R. Bertuccio, who we lost tail end of last season, back on the series, and we know with the Myers brothers, Georgie, Andy Seiss, the defending champion, Kyle Ebersol, it's really a very strong crop of cars from beginning to end, and I mean, it's going to have a very good average, and Richie's going to figure right in there.
And let's talk to that new driver of the Hillbilly racing entry. Richie Pallai Jr. joins us. Richie, welcome to NASCAR Coast to Coast, and congratulations on all your off-season success, new ride, and moving down south to be a part of the full-time NASCAR Whelen Southern Modified Tour.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys having me on, and yeah, I'm real excited about this upcoming season. David and Susan put together a real good program down here, and I'm just fortunate enough to be a part of it.
Been one of the top rides on the circuit. I mean, we've seen Spencer Davis in some of the runs that he had. I think Woody Pitkat got behind the wheel of the car a little bit. But ever since that car has been around, it's always been a very strong machine. I know they tried some stints and some runs up in the Northeast, but everywhere that car goes, it's got a good driver behind it, and obviously this group is very high on Richie Pallai.
Yeah, I mean, I've raced against David, for my time up in the Northeast, and, we've always raced good against each other, whether James was in the car or Woody Pitkat or whoever it may be, and always had a lot of respect for what he did and how he did it. And when I moved down here, we got in touch a little bit. We tried to run the North-South Shootout together at the end of 2015, and unfortunately nothing really came about, but we stayed in contact, and we had dinner a few months ago, and we just talked about where we both wanted to see ourselves this year, and it lined up perfectly. And after visiting with him at the shop, it's turned out to be a real good relationship already, and I look forward to the first race this weekend at Caraway. I think we'll have a pretty good piece, and I'm real excited about it.
And, of course, relationships are everything in this sport, and I want to go back to the beginning of your career and kind of bring us through how you got into motorsports and your driving career, because I believe it was a relationship with a track promoter up north at the Stafford Motor Speedway that helped get you started in racing.
Yeah, I mean, my first sport growing up is still, I guess it is hockey, and that's what kind of carried me, through my years. But I have a relationship with my dad who did a lot of sponsoring of events and cars growing up through his employer. I grew up at a lot of the dirt tracks in the Northeast, and then especially Stafford Motor Speedway, and became real good friends with the Roots. And when I was 15 at Stafford, just watching an SK race, Jack Carew Jr. came up to me and says, "Hey, you want to try out a mini sprint over at Whip City Speedway in Westfield, Mass?" And I said, "Absolutely, but you have to go over there and convince that guy," pointing to my dad. And, I convinced my dad. We ran a few races, and then the next season they started the SK Light Modified division at Stafford. And, Jackie put together a ride for me there, and I think we won our third or fourth race and lost the championship by 2 points. And ever since then, we just kept building the program from SKs to owning our own tour cars and just trying to make our name for ourselves with a small team with not a lot of help and doing the best we can. And we always had fun doing it, though.
Well, we talked about a lot of the drivers that you'll be facing this year on the NASCAR Whelen Southern Modified Tour, one of which we just talked to, and Danny Bohn, who has had a lot of success on the tour and also at Bowman Gray Stadium. Might be getting a little bit ahead of the game here, but not sure if you guys have made your plans 100%. And going back to what I said about this team venturing up to the Northeast sometimes when there was a lull, you guys have 4 races on the tour coming up down here, and then you have that traditional break. Are you looking to do Bowman Gray on a weekly basis, or are you guys looking to move around a little bit, or may you just park things, freshen things up, and get ready for the stretch run?
Right now our main goal is just to focus on the Southern Modified Tour. Dave and I have made a commitment that we want to really go for the championship, and we want to run well and focus week by week to make sure we have all our ducks in a row for the Southern Tour. I have a great relationship with Pallai. They're a company that's out of Michigan that's been with me for a good amount of years now. So they've come on board and got behind me and supported me, which I'm very fortunate about. But if anything other than the Southern Modified Tour, we would have to raise more funding to do so, and that's something that I hope with running well early and kind of showcasing what we have as a team. Hopefully there'll be more businesses and people that want to get behind our program and want to get their name on our car. And if that does happen, with the way the schedule works, if David wants to go run a show here or there and we're able to financially, then absolutely I'll have my helmet ready and we'll definitely do it. But right now we're focused on Caraway and running well, qualifying well, and racing well. And then we'll look at the race after that and then start preparing for that.
Yeah, that's the first big event for the NASCAR Southern Modifieds this weekend at Caraway Speedway. One of the big events up north that you're very familiar with is the Spring Sizzler. You picked up a race win there back in 2009 in an SK Modified. No matter what division you win in, whether it be a modified, a late model, a modified tour, how big is that race weekend? One of the traditional race weekends of the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour and just Northeast racing in general.
Oh, it's huge. As a short track racer, that's our Daytona 500. That's the race everybody wants to win, whether it's a dare stock or a tour modified. So when we won in 2009, it was pretty surreal to be able to do that, at the Spring Sizzler. But just Stafford Motor Speedway in general is, as you guys know, is a marquee, facility. It's way beyond what typical short track is, from just how nice, just the whole grounds are and how the routes run it. So anytime you're able to win a race like that, especially in a modified in Connecticut, as Kyle, is a huge accomplishment, and it's definitely something you should be proud of.
Talked about your competition that you're going to have this year, and it is loaded from top to bottom here on the NASCAR Whelen Southern Modified Tour. But one of the things they added last year, which we all loved, was the pit stop. Your thoughts on that and kind of the Whelen Southern Modified Tour program and how they do things?
The pit stop is to me is great because it just throws strategy into the whole race, which I've always enjoyed, and which I really enjoyed at tracks like Loudon, where we used to have live pit stops. It just changes the whole dynamic of the race and makes it more than just how good your car is throughout the race. So from a Southern modified standpoint, I like how they have a little bit stiffer of a tire rule on only changing one tire. That just helps with the cost of the whole program. So I'm excited. I've never raced at any of the tracks on the schedule outside of Bristol. I've never even seen any of the other tracks outside of Concord and Bowman Gray. So, I'm excited. I think with just a fresh mind. I know when we went to Line Rock, when I ran up north, I'd never seen it before. And we ended up running top 5. So maybe not knowing the track too much will benefit us. And I know David and his team have a good notebook already of all these tracks, so I'm real excited about it.
You mentioned hockey as your number one sport earlier in this interview. Talk a little bit about that career, an amazing career. You played for William Patterson University in New Jersey, went to Europe a couple of times, representing the U.S. In some collegiate games. Kind of bring us through your hockey career and how difficult was the balance in playing hockey, and you're also a pretty good modified driver over at Stafford Speedway.
I mean, I went to New York University. That's where I really played my collegiate hockey. So, living in New York City at the time around the tour was always, just a lot going on trying to play, collegiate athletics and also balancing, racing at school and all that. But, I learned at a young age. I went to boarding school where I played 3 varsity sports and then also raced. So I learned, I guess you could say, time management. But I'm a big proponent on, you learn a lot from sports, whether it's racing or other sports. So hockey is playing at a high level of any sport, especially I think hockey, you kind of get mentally tough. And in racing, being mentally tough, I think, is one of the keys that you really need to have, with the long races, with different things happening. So I always had a good time being able to transition from hockey season into racing season, and then when racing season used to die down, hockey season would start back up. So never really had any time off, but when you're doing what you love, it's a good thing.
And hopefully all of that will pay off this weekend as you get set to get underway in the NASCAR Whelen Southern Modified Tour. As always, Richie, thank you for joining us here on the show. Hopefully we'll have you back on here soon to talk about maybe your first win on the Southern Modified Tour. And if not, we'll definitely see you in 2 weeks' time at the Concord Speedway. That's great, guys. I appreciate it for having me on. And hopefully next week call back in with a trophy. There we go. Richie Pallai Jr. going to make his NASCAR Whelen Southern Modified debut this weekend with Hillbilly Racing in the number 79 car that has been made so famous by a number of drivers over the years. I believe James Savali, the last driver to bring that car to victory lane, and it's been a number of years, 4 or 5 years ago now. So Richie going to try to get that team back into victory lane. Let's take a moment, though, and go off the wall with last year's NASCAR Whelen Modified champion Doug Coby. And then we're going to come back and talk to Julia Landauer, the newest driver at Bill McAnally Racing.
Do not go international with that NASCAR. It's American sport, not international.
NASCAR Coast to Coast will be right back on MRN.com.
Be the winner of your next family dinner. Choose Creekstone Farms Premium Black Angus Beef, proud sponsor of MRN. Act fast because while supplies last, you can get 2 delicious beef brisket flats for just $79.99. That's a savings of almost $30. Plus, receive free shipping with your online order of $100 or more. No coupon code required. Get first place taste with our superior quality beef and pork products, all raised and grazed in the USA. Visit us today at creekstonefarms.com.
Before you set your fantasy racing lineup, check in with our experts to get the inside line on who's fast and who's last entering the race weekend. Robbie Mays and Tyler Burnett take you inside the facts, stats, and latest news from the track so you have everything you need to set your team and win the weekend. Log on to MRN.com and enter the Media Center every Friday. It's the inside line on demand and only on the Motor Racing Network.
Motor Racing Network, glad to have you aboard for our coverage of practice, something we will be doing all throughout the year. They are pretty close in practice.
You said you learned a lot in practice.
We can have a good, clean practice. How many teams are going to opt out of practice?
Get this practice session underway.
As we close out practice.
What are we talking about? Practice? We're talking about practice, man.
We are talking practice. Sprint Cup Series practice on the Motor Racing Network. Join us all season long on MRN.com and the MRN app.
Race cars are finally tuned for maximum performance. Freightliner trucks are too, taking into account all the factors that drive your profitability and lower your real cost of ownership. Efficient aerodynamic designs paired with the integrated Detroit powertrain maximizes fuel efficiency, uptime, quality, connectivity, and safety to give truckers peace of mind and a better return on investment. Find out how to lower your real cost of ownership at rco.freightlinertrucks.com.
Hey, this is NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour driver Timmy Salamito, and you're listening to NASCAR Coast to Coast on MRN.com. Now back to Kyle and Buddy.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Hercules Tire. Kyle, Ricky, Buddy Long, and for the third week in 4 shows, we have an in-studio guest, Buddy.
True. Who did we? What week didn't we have somebody?
Last week.
Last week?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that's right.
They like
you
to
want to come next week, too?
Oh, yeah.
Just in case?
Come back, yeah, double exposure.
Julia Landauer joins us now here on set. Julia, welcome to the show. We understand you've had a very long day. You just left my favorite place on earth, Charlotte Douglas International Airport.
Yeah, it has been a long day. I was in Alaska giving a couple of talks up there, and so I left Anchorage at 9:30 Alaska time last night, which is 1:30 in the morning. So it's been lots of travel, but Charlotte International is a great place to land, right?
I guess.
You can always watch all the construction that's going on around there. There's always
There we
something going
go.
on. Talk about you've had a whirlwind last few days or a week or whatever the case may be, but what a whirlwind off season. I mean, a limited sportsman championship at Motor Mile and jumping up into the K&N Series.
Yeah, I mean, this has been an incredible off season, and our Motor Mile season was done in September. So it's a lot of time thinking, okay, how am I going to get going for next year? How's that going to look? And then we started talking with Bill and got those conversations rolling and did some testing, and all of a sudden it was like, all right, K&N it is. And so right before the new year, we signed the contract, and it's been a hustle since then to get all the logistical stuff set up and everything, but it's going really well. I love the crew guys that I'm working with and my crew chief and team manager and everything, so I'm really excited.
You've been involved in motorsports in quite some time. For those that may not know the history, kind of walk us through how you got into the sport and ultimately to one of NASCAR's top touring teams right now.
Don't
Bill
blame me for any of your trial.
I heard
travels. Don't blame me.
Well, Buddy and I go way back to go-karting days, but I started in go-karts when I was 10, and it was originally so that my family could do something together on the weekends with my siblings, but my parents also wanted their girl to compete head-to-head with the boys. So we did that and then started climbing the ranks, and then when I was 13, I started racing Skip Barber, which is the road course, basically a Rive and Drive series. Climbed my way up for the Formula cars for a little bit, and then when I was 16, did some Ford Focus midgets with Bob East, just a couple of races in that season, and then made the jump to late models, and then also went to school at Stanford, and that time raced legend cars on the West Coast and on the East Coast, and then made the jump back to the limiteds last year, just really last minute, kind of in late March or early April, started talking with Lee Pulliam to try to get something set up, and he said, hey, we've got a limited car if you want to run that, and it worked out really well. So yeah, that's kind of a brief whirlwind history, but a lot of the racing I've done has been like partial seasons. So last year was the first time I'd had a full season since 2007, which really made a huge difference.
But listen to all that, we thought Ryan Preece and Bobby Santos made us tired when we listened to their schedules. Getting back to Lee Pulliam real quick, I mean, that was pretty cool when we learned that you were kind of under his wing running a limited sportsman car. Kind of take us through the relationship you've had. He's been obviously one of the most successful NASCAR Whelen All-American Series drivers, and what it was like to learn underneath him.
Yeah, I mean, Lee is great, and people love him, people hate him. He's kind of covered the spectrum in that sense, but he knows his stuff so well. And what I really appreciated was that he wasn't afraid of hurting my feelings. I didn't feel like I was treated as the female driver. He told me when I was being dumb. He told me when I was doing great. And being able to just be upfront like that, we got really, really quick, really efficiently, and I think that was really cool. And, they welcomed me with open arms, and I think once I proved that, okay, I can win, it was like, okay, how do we keep winning? How do we keep going? And it was just an absolute pleasure to be able to race on such good equipment and have such good coaching throughout the whole season.
How big was that championship last year at Motor Mile?
Oh, the championship was huge. I mean, especially, it was my first full season post-college, and so kind of transitioning out of the academic racer into full-time racer. It was really great for my motivation, my confidence to be able to say, all right, I can still drive a car and still race it really well, and it was just great to be able to now go into the K&N Series with that mental confidence, because that's such a big part of racing, obviously. And so to know, okay, I'm capable of winning, even though this is going to be a huge jump, and I have even less seat time than my teammates, it's going to be a big challenge, but I know that I have the capabilities of making it work.
Now, thanks to social media, thankfully, we knew you were going to be on Survivor, or I did, because I knew you were, but it was still a shock.
Yeah.
I just was blown away. I didn't know that you were part of something or wanting to be something like that. How did that process even happen? Take us through those steps.
Yeah, well, when you have the opportunity to apply for Survivor, I mean, that's something you can't really give up. And so, I went through the application process, sent in the video, and my thinking was partially, it's a really cool show. It's a cool experience, and I knew that my racing was going to be only a little bit that year anyway because of how college and funding worked out. And so I thought, okay, if there's going to be a time for me to do this, this is now. And also just, I thought it would be really cool to show that I could be that, badass woman on Survivor. That's kind of a lot of the perception of the women on the show, and I thought that would be really cool. And it was an incredible experience, so challenging. I'm not built for reality TV. I will stick with racing from here on out, but it was really cool, and it was good to learn about media. It was good to learn about how fans perceive you, and I learned a lot of things I probably wasn't doing very well from a branding perspective, and I was able to take away a lot of sometimes very painful lessons, but it was a really good experience.
Now, I'm a reality show junkie, and Survivor is one of my shows, that and Real World, which I don't think they even do anymore. Any secrets?
This is the real world.
This is the real world. That's correct. Any secrets you could maybe tell us from behind the scenes?
That was going through my mind when you were talking.
Well, I will say it's very authentic. I don't,
Okay.
This show
That was
would
my biggest
not. This show would not have made it this far. I mean, we're in our 31st or 32nd season.
Wow,
Yeah,
really?
so it's been on the air for 16 years, and it wouldn't make that long if it wasn't authentic. And I was convinced that when we lost our first challenge, we were going to get water bottles on the way to Tribal Council. It was going to be all great.
Nothing.
Nope. You're still thirsty, you're still hurting, and you keep going. And so, in that sense, it's kind of boring. There's not that much to say there. Right. But, I mean, they make sure you don't die. That's it's comforting to know that you're going to be taken care of if something happens.
That's important.
It is. But, I mean, it's so weird because, I had never been in a position where I couldn't trust anybody like that before. And the minute you start getting comfortable with someone, you have to think, oh, are they going to sabotage me after this? And I've never been that hungry before. I mean, that is tough. Day 7 was really the worst.
And you went 19?
19 days, yeah.
Wow.
And, I mean, I lost a lot of weight in those 19 days. So on the one hand, I'm almost a little relieved I didn't make it further because I don't know what my body would have done at that point. But it was tough, and, you learn a lot about yourself, and you think you're on the end of what you're capable of, and then you get pushed a little bit harder, and you're able to keep pushing. So mentally and physically, it was quite challenging.
And you can take a lot of what you learn there and apply it to what you're doing right now. It really does help.
Oh, for sure. I mean, everything from, as I said, the people component, the, thinking you're at your limit when you're not quite there, learning how to push yourself that little bit harder, dealing with a group of people. I mean, the tribe still has to come together and work together for the challenges and then still, fight against each other afterwards. So it's a weird dynamic. And, with teamwork, on the team, we have a lot of different personalities that are coming together and figuring out how to lead everyone to really give their hearts and souls to making the car as best as it can be.
Outside of driving a race car and being a reality star on Survivor, you do how many speaking engagements a year, and what do you cover? Because you're every time I look on your social media, you're somewhere.
Yeah, so when I was a senior at Stanford, they put on their own version of the TEDx Talks, and TED Talks are about 20-minute talks that they put on 3 main events a year, and it's basically thought leaders, and they're coming out and giving these really engaging talks. And so there are a lot of other institutions that put on their own version, TEDx. And so once I did that my senior year, I realized, wow, people laugh at what I say on stage. This is really cool. And, I was creating value, and so started doing more speaking engagements with high schools, with universities, different associations. I was speaking with Alaska's government up on Monday. And so it's I've done a couple talks, some branding-oriented talks, other more women empowerment or stereotypes that women are accused of and how to kind of fight past those for men and women both. And then also just generic tips for success. I've learned a lot from racing. I tell a lot of very colorful stories from racing that I think people really appreciate hearing, and it's kind of jarring to some of the tactics I have on stage, but it's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Toyota sponsorship coming on board with you guys just a few weeks ago, the announcements through social media. I think we've talked to practically every Bill McAnally driver. I don't think we've talked to Rutley Herbst yet.
Okay.
We'll talk to him, I'm sure.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah.
We have a cool team this year.
I go back to Patrick Staropoli, Christian Payhud, who I think may have been racing when you were in karting.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
Christian
not sure.
and I are buds, yeah.
Yeah. So many different Bill McAnally drivers. Obviously, you're coming from the camp that won the championship. You've talked and highlighted a little bit about how cool it is to race or work with that organization already. How cool is it really once you get to that track?
It's really cool, and it's interesting because on the one hand, it's like, all right, we are the championship team to beat. That's really cool. It also means we still have the championship driver to beat, and so we just have a ton of talent in our camp, not to mention all the other drivers in the series. And so I think it's going to be a real challenge, but the combination of, Todd Riley, Chris, and myself, I think we're all going to mesh really well, and I think we're going to continue to be really good teammates. And we saw Riley and Todd working together at New Smyrna. And so I think it's interesting. We've got two really young drivers, and then we've got Chris and myself who are a slightly older end of the spectrum. And I think that dynamic is really cool, and there's a lot of excitement going on. And, I think the team has a lot of really good synergy. And so Irwindale will be a good test to see how true that is, but I'm pretty confident.
Mentioned you're with last year's champion on the team, of course, Chris Eggleston, picking up the title in 2015. How many of the tracks have you been to on the K&N West Series? You give me the look, like not probably many, I assume.
No.
She's a survivor. She's good.
Yeah, we'll make it work. No, so I've been on Sonoma in a Legends car, which is clearly
little
very,
different.
very different than putting a stock car on there. And I've tested at Irwindale and Kern, but don't have a whole lot of seat time. As I said, it's gonna be a big jump up this year, and haven't done any other racing in the off season. Right, the 12th of September was my last race.
Wow.
So we'll make it work.
Two of the big storylines last year was the variety of new tracks or different tracks the series went to, but also the youth movement and the injection of young talent that came into the K&N series. Now, obviously, Todd and Riley are there. Last year, Nicole Behar, James Bickford, Noah Gregson, Jefferson Pitts Racing, making the transition from Gene Price Motorsports over to that, and not even looking like they skipped a beat with Grayson Raz as well. Are you seeing a lot of the same ingredients and a lot of the same things as far as the driver lineup that we're going to see here in a couple of weekends in Irwindale? Is it looking strong from what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think it's looking strong, and I've really only seen the entry list on the Home Tracks website, but I mean the West Coast is a lot more stout than in terms of number of drivers than the East Coast, which is interesting. I'm not sure it's been like that for a while, so it'll be cool to see who else comes. I know we have a lot of returning drivers, as you were mentioning, and it'll be interesting to see some of the new ones. I know we do have some new faces coming
Julia Landauer, I believe, is one of them.
I believe. Yeah. I think she'll be there.
I will be.
We joke a lot about the start of the interview about Charlotte Douglas Airport, but that's a place you're going to have to see a lot this year, because I believe you live here in Charlotte, and that's a lot of West Coast travel.
Yeah. No, I live in Charlotte, and I have to say I am loving it. Coming from New York City, I, no offense, didn't have very high expectations, but it is really cool. It's a nice city. There are a lot of cool neighborhoods. But yeah, I'll be traveling back and forth, racking up the miles. Yeah.
Now, wait a minute. Mom was a lawyer, wasn't she? And Dad's a doctor. They didn't buy you a charter plane for your birthday?
No.
At Concord
Those
Regional?
days, no.
You're on your own?
No, I am on my own. That's part of the reason we do all these speaking engagements, right? Got to pay for all these flights.
There you go. Hey, you mentioned the two other kids, obviously, that raced with you in karting. And Mom and Dad were kind of happy to have a little bit of freedom at home, but they're also doing well in school also.
Yeah. And so my sister is about to graduate from college, and she's a lightweight rower, so she's a totally different type of competitive person. And my brother just started college, but we grew up racing together, and that was so cool. And I definitely miss seeing them and working with them on that. But my parents are definitely happy to be on their own again. They're high school sweethearts, so they're ready to go back to their life before us. But they're always very supportive of the racing. And right now, this is really my project, and I'm taking the wheel on making it happen. But they continue to be super supportive, so that's really important. When I have my frustrating days, I can bounce ideas off of them or vent to them, and I feel very lucky that I have such a strong family background that continues to support me.
Outside of the K&N West schedule, will we see you behind the wheel in any other events, like some NASCAR K&N Pro Series East races, potentially?
We definitely hope to put some East races on the schedule. We'll just have to see how it plays out. But I do have some late models at Irwindale with Tim Huddleston planned for this year. So we'll see how many of those work out. But it should be good to get some different type of seat time, just like so many of my competitors are doing. So constantly working on it.
So even though it's a step up into the touring series, you're still going to pick Lee's brain a little bit on
Lee and I still talk, and he's been great in offering to help however he can. He's been to quite a few tracks, and we had good chemistry last year, and my crew chief was awesome last year, Matt Taylor, and so I think they're pretty excited to see me make the next step, and so they want to help however they can.
Now, and real quick, you could pick on him a little bit now, because we know he's going to get better as the year goes on, but he hadn't gotten off to a very good start with a couple of so finishes at Myrtle Beach and Caraway, so you could really pick on him right now.
He and I were just talking about that. Yeah, he hadn't had this string of bad luck, I guess. But he'll pull out of it. It'll be fine.
We're used to seeing him in victory lane by now.
All the time.
It's incredible, and with Leanne and everything they've gone
that's
through.
true.
Yes. It's cool they got to end the season so strong, but I definitely hope they're able to pick it up a little bit for the rest of 2016.
Early season goals. I know teams like to put goals together, and they change during the course of the year. Sure. Are there any early season goals right now going into this first stretch with Irwindale and Kern County?
Yeah, I mean, we want to be competitive off the bat, and, it would be awesome to win in the first race like so many of the BMR guys have, but we understand that may not happen, but we want to be competitive. We want to be constantly improving, and, I have high expectations for myself, and, when we have our first practice day right before Irwindale with everyone, that'll give a much better sense of where we are, but, I expect to be up at the front, and, we do have our goals. We do have, you want to finish on the lead lap. You want to, be able to go to the next race with no damage to the car. But then beyond that, obviously as a racer, I'm competitive and want to be really competitive off the bat.
I would say this has probably been the strongest season we've had so far as female competition on the series. Obviously with Sarah Cornett-Ching, Allie Kern, Dominique Van Wieringen with a very good run down at New Smyrna. You as well. Wondering why you weren't at New Smyrna, but I'm not going to ask you. And I hope we get to see you a lot this year. But we always ask most of our female talent, which is very good, the respect factor and how you're treated when you come into the garage area. You have a much more diverse background. You've been, and I hate to use the word, no pun intended, survivor, but you have. I mean, you've learned. These guys have got to look at you almost even a little bit with more respect before you've gotten behind the wheel of a race car thing. Wow, this girl knows endurance big time.
Yeah, I think especially over the past couple of years, I haven't felt that I've had much of an issue in terms of having respect, and I've been able to prove myself on track. But I think the bigger thing that's weird is the fact that I'm a New Yorker, right? Like, I'm the Yankee to a lot of people, right? And so kind of dealing with that's been kind of the bigger cultural barrier for me. But for the most part, I feel respect for my teammates, and, I'm assuming the other guys in the garage will be good, because at the end of the day, we're all racers, we're competitors, and as soon as we prove that we're worthy of other people's competition, then that kind of speaks for itself.
When you go to a racetrack for the first time, and new car in the K&N series this year, what's that first practice session like? What do you look for? When you go to Irwindale in a couple of weeks, what's that test day going to look like for you?
Yeah, well, when we have our first test day, my first goal was to make sure I could actually do 130 or 140 miles an hour, because I'd never gone that fast on an oval. So the speed was the big thing. But, making sure we learn the line really quickly, that's something I've gotten a lot better at. And then, just constantly working on the braking points and getting back to gas. But the line is the most important. You can't really tweak until you get that figured out, but definitely gotten better at, just getting quick off the bat. And so we will try to, be close to up to speed within the first session.
Don't mean to switch gears and go back to Survivor, but do you keep in touch with some of the people that you were on the show with at all?
I don't really keep in touch with a whole lot of the people. I mean, a lot of them are crazy. I mean, they get a lot of crazy people, but no, there are some people. There's a guy who raced BMX bikes who was super cool. 40-year-old dad, and so he was really cool. And then there's another woman my age who keep in touch with primarily via social media. But yeah.
You were on fans versus favorites? Was that
it was
the
so
series
unfair,
you were on?
So unfair, because it's half returning players and half new players, and just we got obliterated.
Because didn't they dump you guys out in a helicopter, and they came in?
We were on the boat.
You were on the boat.
We got
That's
sunburned. I got a second-degree sunburn on my face, and then they got to come in on a helicopter. It hurt a little bit.
That was to introduce them to the show. The favorites came in on a nice air-conditioned chopper.
Put us in our place.
They came in this rickety boat, I guess.
Yep.
So it was fun.
Do you have, when you have downtime, other hobbies? Anything else that you like to do?
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, I really love, the exploring and going outside and still being in a new city, because I've only been in Charlotte since August. Going out and exploring. I love music, and so there are a lot of cool,
Charlotte's a cool place.
like new music, more grassroots music is really cool, and like eating, so trying out a lot of different food spots. And luckily, since I've been able to travel so many places, I am able to, walk around and take in the neighborhood. But then I like reading, and I really like exercising and doing stuff outside. So in the small town,
I need to marry her because she needs to tell me how to not eat as much and exercise better.
Just keep running.
There you go. Keep running. And speaking of running, we're running out of time. Time, as always, seems to run out on this show. Thanks for stopping in the studio, though, joining us. Best of luck to you when your season gets underway in just over a week's time.
Thank you so much, guys. It was great being here, and thank you for having me. Great to see you guys.
Julia Landauer joining us here on NASCAR Coast to Coast. Again, another fast hour, buddy. I believe, we got one track opening up this week in South Boston?
South Boston Speedway has Twin 100s coming up this weekend. A few others will continue on, but yeah, it's about to hit. I liked it back at the office. Flipped open the garage, Goodyear tire test. I can hear the cars.
That's
People
right.
like the birds. I like hearing cars on the racetrack out there.
Your office right behind Charlotte Motor Speedway, with the Sprint Cup Series are testing tires today for their races in May at the track. I want to thank Danny Bohn, Richie Pallai Jr. for joining us. They're back on track this weekend, along with Julia Landauer. For our producer, Craig Moore, Buddy Long. I'm Kyle Rickey. We'll do it again next Wednesday here on the Motor Racing Network.
This has been NASCAR Coast to Coast with MRN short track experts Kyle Rickey and Buddy Long. Tune in next Wednesday at noon at MRN.com for more talk from NASCAR home tracks and touring series. NASCAR Coast to Coast is also available on demand in the MRN.com Media Center or download from iTunes or Stitcher. NASCAR Coast to Coast is a production of the Motor Racing Network. All rights reserved.